A boy has to go to jail for a minor crime, but this is not just any ordinary jail. No prisoner has ever escaped from this prison. Today I will explain how to crush prison in the middle of a desert and overcome the curse that hangs over their family. A place like a desert, where the heat is unbearable. The ground has cracked open from the scorching sun, and in the middle of this intense heat, a few boys were digging in the desert. Suddenly, a poisonous snake appeared. One of the boys working there spotted the snake. This boy had been so frustrated with his life. He had suffered so much that he didn't even want to live anymore. So, when he saw the snake, he stepped forward as if to let it bite him, hoping for death. As soon as he stepped forward, the snake bit him. The venom quickly took over, and the boy died on the spot. The story now shifts to a boy named Stanley. Stanley was walking down the road heading somewhere when a pair of shoes fell right on him. Stanley sat down on the road, scared. Stanley's dad was working on a special research project. He was trying to invent something that would get rid of the foul smell in shoes. So Stanley decided to take the shoes to his dad, but just then, a police car showed up. The police surrounded Stanley from all sides. The shoes Stanley had picked up actually belonged to a famous baseball player. During a charity match, those shoes had been stolen. The police thought Stanley might have stolen them, so they arrested him and took him straight to their house. Stanley's dad did his research work at home, so their house was full of research equipment. When the police saw all the stuff in Stanley's house, their suspicion grew. They thought Stanley and his dad might be involved in illegal activities. On top of that, there were even more shoes at Stanley's house. Stanley's room had posters of basketball players on the walls. Based on all this evidence, Stanley was taken straight to court. After considering everything, the judge gave Stanley two options. 1, go to jail, or 2, spend 18 months at Green Lake, a place where prisoners don't stay locked up. They can wander around the area like free men. After hearing all this, Stanley chose the Green Lake option, so Stanley was taken by bus to Green Lake, a desert area. He was really scared because everything felt so strange. It seemed like there was some curse on his family, and even though he was innocent, this was happening to him. Stanley noticed hundreds of holes dug all over the desert, but he couldn't figure out what they were for. Then, Stanley saw a boy standing in the middle of the desert with a horse-drawn carriage. But when he looked again, the boy was gone. Stanley thought it was probably just his imagination. After a few hours of travel, they reached a small camp. This was the Green Lake prison. There were many other prisoners like Stanley there. When Stanley arrived, he met a man named Mr. Sun, who worked for the prison warden. Mr. Sun laughed when he heard Stanley's name because he thought it sounded funny. Stanley explained that his grandfather had been very proud of the name, and that's why he liked it so much. Mr. Sun took Stanley around the entire prison, showing him everything and explaining the rules. Mr. Sun told Stanley that this prison was very different from any other prison in the world, because there were no clocks to tell the time. There wasn't even a calendar to know the date, so no one could tell how long they had been imprisoned here. Even if they traveled thousands of miles away, they wouldn't find anything around. This place was located in an area that no one knew about. That's why prisoners here aren't kept behind bars. The prisoners are free to roam anywhere they want, but no prisoner can ever leave this place. That's why, even though there are no walls or bars, no prisoner has the courage to escape. Mr. Sun gave Stanley 2 pairs of clothes and a pair of shoes. Along with that, he handed Stanley a shovel and said, "From today, you'll dig holes in the middle of the desert every day. The hole must be about 5 feet deep. You can use this shovel to measure the depth of the hole, but the deeper the hole, the longer you'll have to stay in the scorching heat of the sun." Along with digging holes, Stanley had to stay alert to avoid snakes and other poisonous creatures, because every part of the desert is filled with dangerous creatures that can kill with just one bite. Hearing all this made Stanley even more scared. Stanley then met the counselor, Dr. Penn. Stanley thought Dr. Penn was a good person. Dr. Penn took Stanley to the back of the prison, and as he showed him everything, he said, "I'm sure by now you've learned all the rules here, but do you know what the first rule is?" At first, no prisoner knows this rule, but I'll tell you. The first rule is, never protest against the warden and always accept whatever the warden does silently. If not, the consequences could be very dangerous. After explaining, Dr. Penn took Stanley to the other prisoners. They showed Stanley his bed, but it was really dirty. Stanley learned that the previous prisoner of this bed had been very sick, which is why the bed was in such bad shape. However, the prisoner had passed away a few days ago. ago. Dr. Penn addressed all the prisoners by their real names, but the prisoners called each other by nicknames, because everyone gets a different nickname after coming here. Interestingly, almost all the prisoners here are under 18 years old. The youngest prisoner is named Zero. He is the smallest, so everyone calls him Zero. Zero was always sad, and since coming here, he hasn't spoken to anyone yet. Stanley called a boy by his real name and asked, "Where's the canteen?" But calling him by his real name made the boy really angry. He started to hit Stanley, then shoved him down and said, "From now on, never call me by my real name. You have to call me by my nickname here, just like everyone else." Here is the translation with the important lines bolded for emphasis. Stanley came to the canteen to eat. They were given thin porridge made from rotten vegetables. Stanley was really struggling to eat this kind of food. While Stanley was sitting and eating, a boy named Ree sitting nearby took some of his food. Ree said that everyone here is given food in limited amounts. "But I need more food because I've worked all day while you've just arrived and haven't done any work." Ree and the others sitting there asked Stanley why he was brought to this prison. Stanley replied that he had stolen a famous baseball player's shoes. Just then, the boy named Zero, who had never spoken to anyone, asked, "Were there any star marks on the shoes you stole?" This was the first time Zero spoke to anyone since coming here. Stanley answered, yes. Stanley remembered that in court, the baseball player had testified. The baseball player explained that since he had no parents growing up, he was raised in an orphanage. Because of this, he had a special connection to the orphanage. That's why he had donated his shoes to the orphanage as a charity. Stanley had pictures of this baseball player in his room, and he was one of his favorites. But in court, Stanley was called a fake fan, which made him feel really bad. That night, as Stanley was about to sleep, he remembered his grandfather. Stanley's grandfather and father both had the same name, Stanley. His grandfather was Stanley II, his father was Stanley III, and Stanley was Stanley IV. This naming tradition had been passed down through their family. One day, Stanley's grandfather had told them that their family was cursed. Because of this curse, the men in their family could never succeed. Even Stanley's father was unable to succeed in his research because of this curse. The first Stanley's luck had been the worst. He had made a lot of money in the stock market, but was killed by a famous serial killer shortly after. This serial killer was named Kissing Kate. The reason for her strange name was that after she killed someone, she would kiss their forehead. But this criminal didn't kiss Stanley Y. Instead, she took all his money and ran away. Stanley III's dead body was left in the desert. The story now returns to the present. Before sunrise, the prisoners are woken up. They are given a special kind of bread to eat, which fills their stomachs with just a small bite. After eating, they are told to pick their shovels. Like everyone else, Stanley picks his shovel, but then Ree comes and snatches the shovel from Stanley because it was small and light, making it easier to work with. At that moment, Stanley learns from another prisoner that Ree takes this particular shovel every day and never lets anyone else use it. So, without any further argument, Stanley and the others pick their shovels. Then, they are driven in a truck to an empty area where they will dig holes. Mr. Sun explains again that if Stanley finds anything interesting while digging, he should quietly inform Mr. Sunday, and if Mr. Sun likes what Stanley finds, he'll be given the rest of the day off. Stanley asks, "So, we're digging these holes to find things?" Mr. Sun replies that the holes aren't for finding anything, they're a punishment, so that they think twice before committing any more crimes. After Mr. Sun left, all the prisoners got to work. Everyone was digging their own holes and throwing the dirt outside. The dust from the boy digging next to Stanley kept falling into his hole. Stanley asked, "Please throw the dirt to the other side. It's all falling into my hole." But the boy and his friends started mocking Stanley after hearing this. While working, Stanley remembered a story about one of his ancestors that he had heard from his grandfather. This ancestor's name was Lyle. Lyle had worked for many years at a pig farm. While working there, he fell in love with the farm owner's daughter, Myra. Myra was the most beautiful girl in the town. One day, Lyle went to a woman named Jeruni, who could tell people's futures. Lyle asked Jeruni what he should do to win a girl's heart, what he should do to make the girl fall in love with him. Jeruni told him, "First, you have to stop thinking about love. Forget about all this love business and move forward. Do one thing. Go straight to America, because there, you will be able to build a great career. Then the girls will follow you." But Lyle didn't want to leave Myra, so he decided to go directly to the farm owner, Myra's father, and speak to him. But there was another boy there, and this boy also loved Myra for a long time. The other boy's financial situation was much better than Lyle's. He had given many pigs as gifts to Myra's father, so Myra's father decided to marry Myra off to this boy. Myra's father told Lyle that he would never marry Myra to him. Feeling very hurt, Lyle immediately went back to Jeruni and told her everything. Lyle said that he was poor, so Myra's father had rejected him and chosen the wealthy boy for his daughter. Hearing Lyle's story, Jeruni felt very sorry for him. She then told Lyle, "You have to take a pig up the mountain every day and let it drink water. As long as the pig is drinking, you have to sing songs. After some days, you will see your little pig grow up and all your pain will be gone." With nothing else to do, Lyle agreed to follow Jeruni's advice. Then Jeruni said, "Once your pain is gone, you have to take me up the mountain with the pig to drink water. And if you don't, a terrible curse will fall on your family." Lyle took the little pig and did as Jeruni said. Every day, he took the pig up the mountain to drink water and sang songs. Spending time with the pig made him feel good, and slowly, all his sorrows started to fade. As time passed, the pig grew bigger. Lyle decided to give the pig as a gift to Myra's father and proposed to Myra. So he went to Myra's house again and told her father how much he loved Myra. He said he was giving his favorite pig as a gift for Myra. But Myra was confused. She didn't know whether to marry Lyle or the rich boy. Lyle realized that all this time he had been in love with a fool. So he threw away the flowers he had brought for Myra and gave up his love. Lyle decided to go to America and build a career there, as Jeruni had advised. A few days later, he packed his things and went straight to America. However, in his busy life, he had forgotten to take Jeruni to the mountain to drink water with the pig. Before leaving for America, he didn't even meet Jeruni once. Jeruni was very hurt by this and immediately cursed Lyle and his entire family. This curse is the reason why no one in their family has ever succeeded. The story shifts back to the present, where Stanley and the other prisoners were working. At that moment, Mr. Sun arrives with a truck full of water. Every day during the work, the prisoners were given water once. The prisoners came with bottles to take the water. Stanley noticed that while digging, the skin on his hands had started to peel off. Seeing this, a boy teased him, saying, "If this is how you're doing on the first day, what will happen in the coming days?" Today, Zero finished his hole first. Zero could work faster than the others. One by one, everyone finished their work and left. However, Stanley was the last one to finish. This was work he had never done before. When his hole was done, there was no one to help him climb out. Stanley tried for a while, but couldn't get out of the deep hole. He was tired, and the hole was too deep. After much effort, Stanley finally managed to climb out. That night, while Stanley was sitting outside the prison, Mr. Sun came by with a gun in hand. When Mr. Sun aimed the gun at Stanley, Stanley got scared. But it turns out that Mr. Sun was actually shooting at a small lizard. When his shot missed, the lizard tried to attack Stanley. Mr. Sun quickly shot again, killing the lizard. Everything here felt very strange to Stanley. Although it was tough for him at first, he started learning the rules of this place. Gradually, Stanley tried to adapt. He now woke up every morning on his own. Eating the disgusting porridge made from rotten vegetables didn't bother him anymore. After breakfast, he didn't talk to anyone and just went to work quietly. He worked diligently, wasting no time. He ignored any conversations inside the prison. However, after digging 5-meter holes every day, both of Stanley's hands became badly injured. It was painful for him to work with his wounded hands. On top of that, there were the constant attacks from poisonous creatures, from which Stanley barely managed to protect himself. In addition, the bad boys in the prison kept harassing him every day. They teased him because he was new, but Stanley never protested. Sometimes they took his food or his favorite shovel. They found many ways to bother him, but Stanley always remained silent and calm. Because of this, everyone gave him the nickname Soft. But Stanley wasn't a coward. He just didn't want to escalate things by speaking up. He managed to get through the 18 months and was just hoping to go home. The good thing about the prison was that the prisoners could send letters to their families. One day, Stanley wrote a letter to his mother telling her that he was doing well there. He didn't want to tell his mother the truth about his suffering because if she knew, she would be very worried. Stanley reassured her that he was having a good time there, almost like a picnic, and that he would be home soon. The next day, while Stanley was digging, he found an old piece of coal. He immediately took the coal to Dr. Penn. The others gathered around to see the coal, but Dr. Penn told him that Mr. Sun wasn't interested in such coal. If Stanley found something valuable, then he should bring it to Mr. Sunday. Maybe then Mr. Sun might give Stanley a day or two off. Dr. Penn also explained to Stanley that the area they were in used to not be a desert. There was a large river surrounding this place, and it was once like a small island. But over time, the river dried up, and the area became a desert. The land surrounding the river had once belonged to the warden's grandfather. The story shifts to the past, hundreds of years ago. At that time, there was a large settlement in this desert-like area where thousands of people lived. The lands around the river were fertile, and crops grew abundantly. This place had everything people needed: roads, schools, colleges, courts, and businesses. People came from distant places to do business here. One such businessman was Sam. Sam was in the onion business. He would bring onions to sell at wholesale prices, transported by donkey carts. Sam always claimed that his onions were not just ordinary onions. Instead, they contained medicine that could cure serious diseases for which no medicine had been discovered yet. On this island lived a girl named Catherine. Catherine was the school teacher of the island. Sam had liked Catherine for a long time, so whenever he came to sell onions, he would bring her special dishes made from onions. In exchange, Catherine would give him a jar of pickles. This pickle made from peaches was a very special dish in the area. Catherine was the most beautiful girl on the island, so all the men admired her. Whenever Catherine spoke to Sam, the others became jealous. One day, while Catherine was teaching the children at school, there was heavy rain outside. Suddenly, the roof of the school started leaking, and water began to pour inside. So, Catherine decided to give the children a day off. That day, Sam came to the school again, and he repaired the roof for Catherine. After fixing the roof, Catherine thanked Sam. They talked for a long time that day. Sam repaired other parts of the school so he could spend more time with Catherine. As they talked, the whole day passed. In the evening, Catherine also taught an adult class on the island, where many of the boys from the village attended. They tried to flirt with her under the guise of the class. One of them was named Walker. Walker was the grandfather of the current warden of the prison. Walker asked Catherine to meet him after the class, but when Catherine refused, Walker became furious. Meanwhile, Sam frequently visited Catherine's school. Over time, he tried to make the school more beautiful. Within a short time, the school looked much better. Eventually, a good friendship formed between them. Sam used to bring his onions by donkey cart, but one day his donkey disappeared. Sam couldn't meet Catherine for a long time, so he bought a boat and started visiting her via the river. As time passed, they fell in love with each other. One night, when Sam came closer to Catherine's house, Walker saw them. Walker immediately spread malicious rumors about them across the village with his people. As a result, the villagers set fire to Catherine's house and school building. Catherine then ran to the police station, but the police officer there was drunk. The officer tried to do something inappropriate with her. When Catherine pushed him away, the officer blamed her for everything. He said that Catherine had fallen in love with someone from a different race, which was a serious crime. He said she deserved punishment because how could a black man like Sam love one of our women? Upon hearing this, Catherine became terrified. She ran towards Sam's place to warn him, but by then it was too late. Walker's men had already shot and killed Sam. Sam's body was being taken far away from the island on a boat. Catherine was so devastated that she vowed to take revenge for Sam's death. From being a calm and gentle girl, she transformed into a psycho. A few days later, she changed herself completely and killed the police officer. After killing him, she kissed his cheek because when he was alive, he had wanted to kiss her. Slowly, Catherine became a gangster. She became known as Kissing Kate. After killing people, she would kiss them on the forehead. The story shifts to the present. Stanley and a few other prisoners were still digging the ground. At that moment, Ree came to Stanley and said, "If you find something valuable under the ground, bring it to me first." In the evening, when Stanley returned to the prison, a boy named Mike came to fight with him. Mike said a lot of nasty things to him, but this time Stanley didn't stay silent. As the fight started, a few boys there managed to stop them. From the moment Stanley started protesting, everyone realized that although he was polite, he knew how to stand up for himself. Now, everyone started respecting Stanley. Slowly, Stanley started to carve out his place in the prison like the others. Before, Stanley had to stand at the end of the line for water, but now he quickly got his turn in the line. A few days later, Stanley met a boy named John, and Stanley and John became best friends. A few days later, Stanley received a letter from his mother. In the letter, Stanley's mother mentioned that his father's experiments had all failed. Due to financial problems, they couldn't pay rent, and the landlord was threatening to evict them. As Stanley was reading the letter, Zero came to him. Zero couldn't read, so he found the letter very interesting. When Stanley read it to him, Zero wanted to learn how to read, but Stanley said, "After working all day, I don't don't have time to teach you. The next day, while digging, Stanley found a metal object with K and B written on it. When Stanley showed it to everyone, they thought it might be a bullet. At that moment, Ree came and snatched it from Stanley. Ree then took the metal to Dr. Penn, who happily passed it on to Mr. Sunday. Mr. Sun immediately informed the warden of the prison. When the warden arrived, everyone was quite surprised. The warden here wasn't a man, but a beautiful woman. The warden, seeing the object, was very pleased and gave Ree the day off. She told everyone else to keep digging the area because there might be more valuable items hidden here. As a result, the other boys had to work harder than usual that day. However, after digging the entire area, nothing else was found. Because the object was found in Stanley's area, but everyone was searching in Ree's area. For several days, all the prisoners kept working in the same area. They dug a massive tunnel, but still found nothing. So the warden instructed them to continue their regular work. The next day, when Mr. Sun was handing out water to the prisoners, John went to his truck. Taking advantage of the opportunity, John stole some sunflower seeds from the truck. After Mr. Sun finished distributing water and left, John shared the seeds with everyone. But unfortunately, after going a little distance, Mr. Sun realized many of his sunflower seeds were missing. He turned the truck around and came back. When Mr. Sun saw them, everyone got scared. They quickly tried to hide the seeds. But unfortunately, the seeds fell near Stanley's feet. Stanley quickly tried to bury the seeds under the ground. But by then, Mr. Sun had seen him. When Mr. Sun asked about it, Stanley said, "It was John who stole them." Since John was his best friend, Stanley lied to protect him. Stanley was taken to the warden for punishment. When Stanley stood in the warden's office, he saw many pictures of kissing Kate. The warden, while applying nail polish, showed Stanley the color of her nails. The nail polish was made from the venom of a rare snake, and it was extremely valuable. As the warden was about to punish Stanley, instead of hitting Stanley, the warden slapped Mr. Sun across the face. The slap was so hard that Mr. Sun fell to the ground. The reason for the slap was that Mr. Sun had stopped Stanley from working just because of a few seeds. The warden then told Stanley to get back to work. When Stanley returned to the work area, everyone treated him like a hero. Stanley had saved someone's life without caring for his own. This act had touched everyone's hearts. Zero liked Stanley's actions so much that he finished Stanley's remaining work for him. Stanley, feeling happy about this, agreed to teach Zero how to read. That day, when Mr. Sun came into the prison, everyone noticed a big mark on his cheek. The mark had been left by the warden's nails. Mr. Sun was so angry at Stanley because he had been slapped by the warden that from that day on, he stopped giving Stanley food and water. Even after working all day, Stanley would ask for water, but Mr. Sun wouldn't give him any. While working that day, Stanley began to think about something: the warden's behavior, the gangster kissing Kate's posters in her office, and the object Stanley had found made him realize that the object might have been kissing Kate's lipstick. Since the warden was obsessed with beauty and makeup, that item must have been very valuable to her. In a flashback, it is shown that when Kissing Kate became a big gangster, she would only kill those who had killed Sam, burned his house and school. After that, Kate started looting treasures and even took treasure from the first Stanley of Stanley's family, killed him, and buried him at that very spot. That spot is now where the prison stands. One day, while Kate was resting at that location, Walker and his wife arrived, pointing guns at Kate, trying to take the treasure. They were desperate for money, as many years had passed since Sam's death. After marrying and starting a new family, Walker's town began to decline. Even the river dried up, and the area turned into a desert. Kate could have killed them right then, but she wanted to make their deaths painful, not easy. Kate intentionally got bitten by a poisonous lizard, knowing it would kill her. She did this so Walker would never find the treasure, and so that his entire family would keep searching for it until their deaths. If Walker couldn't find the treasure, he would eventually die from the lack of money. This would be the greatest punishment for them. The story now returns to the present. The warden of the prison is a descendant of Walker's family. That's why she's still searching for Kissing Kate's treasure. This is why she built the prison, so that prisoners could dig holes and help search for the treasure. Meanwhile, Stanley had been teaching Zero every day. One day, Zero revealed to Stanley that his real name is Hektak Jaruni. In other words, Zero is a descendant of the woman Jaruni, who had cursed Lyle. Since Zero was able to dig holes very quickly, he would finish his work every day and help Stanley with his hole. This made the others envious, and they would purposely throw dirt into Stanley's hole. One day, Zero told Stanley about his mother. He said how much his mother had suffered for him, but one day she suddenly disappeared. Despite searching everywhere, he could never find her. From then on, he grew up on the streets. Hearing this, Stanley felt very sorry for him. The next day, while Stanley was working, a boy came up to him and started insulting him. When they started arguing, Dr. Penn encouraged them to fight. This led to a physical fight between the two. At one point, the boy started beating Stanley badly. Seeing this, Zero came to Stanley's aid. Zero was hitting the boy so hard that the boy seemed to be getting knocked out. Just then, Dr. Penn intervened and stopped the fight. Upon hearing about the fight, the warden immediately arrived at the scene. When the warden asked about the reason for the fight, everyone complained about Stanley, saying that Stanley dug half the hole and Zero finished the rest for him. But Stanley explained that in return, he helped Zero by teaching him how to read. Hearing this, Dr. Penn started making fun of Zero. In anger, Zero hit Dr. Penn with a shovel and ran away. Mr. Sun chased after Zero, but the warden stopped him, saying Zero could go wherever he wanted because there was no one in the world who would look for him if he went missing. They then deleted all records of Zero from the prison. They made sure his file was ready in such a way that it would seem like he had never been there. That night, Stanley was worried about Zero. Everyone was saying that in such a harsh desert, Zero would surely die on his own. But then Stanley remembered how the first Stanley of his family, when Kissing Kate had looted him, had been stuck in this desert. The first Stanley had survived for about 16 days because he had found a place to stay. If Zero could find a place like that, he might survive. But no one knew where such a place in this vast desert was, and neither the first Stanley nor anyone else had been able to tell. By the time the first Stanley had been found, he had lost his sanity. The next day, another boy of Zero's age came to the prison. This boy was very mischievous and constantly bothered Stanley. Meanwhile, Stanley had planned to find Zero. So, when Mr. Sun came to distribute water, Stanley took the opportunity to steal Mr. Sun's truck and escape. Realizing this, Mr. Sun grabbed the truck door and tried to stop him, but Stanley shoved him into a hole. However, instead of looking forward, Mr. Sun was looking at Stanley, which caused the truck to fall into a hole. Still, Stanley didn't give up and started running to escape. As Stanley ran, the other prisoners cheered for him and appreciated what he had done. Meanwhile, the warden heard about the escape and said she would inform Stanley's family in 2 weeks. By then, Stanley's body would be decayed. On the other hand, Stanley was running through the desert in the scorching heat. After a while, he saw a man, but the man suddenly vanished. Just then, Stanley spotted a boat. It was Sam's boat, which had been abandoned after the river dried up. Zero had taken shelter under the boat. When Zero saw Stanley, he was extremely happy. A lot of time had passed, and both of them were very hungry. They searched the boat and found several jars of peach pickle, which Catherine had given to Sam. Even after years, the pickle had not spoiled, so both of them ate the pickle to satisfy their hunger. Just then, Stanley noticed a mountain in the distance. It had a mark on top, resembling a finger. Upon closer inspection, Stanley realized that this might be the place where the first Stanley had taken shelter. They both started climbing the mountain to find shelter. While climbing, Stanley kept slipping, but Zero used his shovel to help lift Stanley up. Then, both of them continued climbing. But after a while, Zero became so tired that he couldn't go any further. He told Stanley to go on ahead and wait for him there. But Stanley, like his ancestor Lyle, who once carried the pig up the mountain, picked up Zero and with great effort continued to climb. Finally, when they reached the top, Stanley saw some green plants and a source of water. There were also several onions there. Stanley and Zero, hungry, started eating the onions. Fortunately, these onions were the same type as Sam's, which had medicinal properties to fight various diseases. After eating the onions, both of them felt much stronger. As Stanley was eating the onions, he found himself unknowingly humming a song that he had always heard from his family. It was the same song that Lyle used to sing while bringing the pig up the mountain for water. In that moment, Stanley unknowingly helped a descendant of Jiruni. He had carried him on his back and brought him here to drink water. This act of kindness brought peace to Jiruni's spirit, and the curse on Stanley's family was lifted. At that moment, Stanley's father was seen to have succeeded in his research. He had developed a spray made from a combination of onions and peaches that could truly eliminate the odor from shoes. This success filled their family with joy, and they began to dance in happiness. Meanwhile, Zero told Stanley that the shoes Stanley was accused of stealing had actually been stolen by Zero. Zero explained that he needed a pair of shoes, and those shoes had been donated by the player to the orphanage where he lived. Zero had no idea how famous the shoes were. When the police were searching for the shoe thief, Zero panicked and threw the shoes off a bridge, and Stanley ended up getting blamed for it. The next day, Zero was caught trying to steal another pair of shoes. Hearing all this, Stanley laughed and said, "There's no use in dwelling on the past." Meanwhile, Stanley's lawyer arrived at the prison. The police had already gathered proof that Stanley was actually innocent, but the warden kept making excuses to prevent him from leaving. The lawyer clearly told the warden, "Next time, I'll bring high court officers with me." After arrest, Stanley and Zero ran to the place where Stanley had found the lipstick cover belonging to Kissing Kate, thinking there might be some treasure hidden there. They dug through the night, and deep in the earth, they found a chest. Inside the chest, they found all of Kissing Kate's hidden treasure. Just as they were about to open it, the warden and Mr. Sun arrived. But before they could do anything, a swarm of poisonous insects and lizards surrounded Stanley and Zero. Even the insects surrounded the chest. It seemed as though the lizards were protecting them. The warden waited, thinking that the lizards would soon kill both of them. A flashback is shown where the warden's grandfather, while searching for the treasure, used to make the warden dig holes on his days off. Meanwhile, morning arrived, and it was clear that the insects did not harm either Stanley or Zero. Just then, Stanley's lawyer, along with several officers, arrived. The warden began making up false stories about Stanley and Zero, claiming that they had stolen the chest from the office. However, Zero showed everyone that Stanley's name was on the chest. The true owner of the treasure in the chest was a descendant of Stanley's family, from whom Kissing Kate had stolen it. The lawyer then placed the chest in his car. When the lawyer came to take Stanley, Stanley told him that he would not leave without Zero. The officers asked to see Zero's file, curious about how long his sentence still was. But the warden had destroyed all of Zero's records. The officers then ordered the rest of the police to investigate further. After a few hours of investigation, it was revealed that Mr. Sun was actually a fugitive. Dr. Penn wasn't a doctor either. They had both been hiding their true identities while working here. Due to the massive fraud in the prison, the warden was also proven guilty. The three of them were arrested. Stanley returned home with Zero. The government handed over the family's property to Stanley's family. Stanley's family was overjoyed to find the treasure. They also found many more property deeds. Stanley wanted to share some of the property with Zero, and his family also gave Zero a portion. Zero used some of the money to hire a detective who managed to find his mother, whom he had lost many years ago. Mother and son were overjoyed to reunite. Then, Stanley and Zero's families lived peacefully in the same neighborhood, like good neighbors. Meanwhile, the terrible prison was shut down, and all the prisoners were sent to the council and released. They would sometimes visit Stanley and Zero. Meanwhile, Stanley's father's research became so successful that the player whose shoes Stanley had been accused of stealing now managed the advertisements for his father's product. However, now everything was right in Stanley's family, and they began to live happily and peacefully together. And this beautiful story comes to an end. If you like the story, don't forget to like, comment, and share. To hear more amazing stories, subscribe and stay with us. Until then, I'll be leaving, and we'll meet again with another wonderful story.